Phillip Ingram. Afternoon to you, Philip.
Just
afternoon. One takeaway moment from there. The Prime Minister said he'll be speaking to Benjamin Netanyahu later today. I'm sure Mr Netanyahu will say thank you very much for your assistance. But I think the wider question, the one we scratch our heads on a little bit here, is does it make a bit of difference at all what the United Kingdom say? There were some, two very intelligent speeches there. We had to help. It was important we stepped in, but we also understand the humanitarian catastrophe. Does Israel listen to anybody outside its own cabinet on these issues?
Israel does listen, and the UK's got some influence, but where the UK's got the majority of the influence is in combining with the United States and influencing what the President of the United States is likely to say to Prime Minister Netanyahu, because Prime Minister Netanyahu does listen to what US sentiment is. However, he's caught between a rock and a hard place because of the extreme right-wing elements of his government. So he will be balancing off what he can potentially get away with to save face domestically, politically, with those extreme right-wing elements to what the international community would accept as a response from Israel for this unprecedented attack. And that's something that's going to take him a few days to work out what to do.
Joe Biden said, take the win, was his line, in which case, of course, Israel would appear to have some kind of moral high ground by not responding, certainly in a military fashion. It's widely seen by many that Israel might have lost that moral high ground over recent weeks, regardless of whether some people believe that or not. Is it an option for Israel to do nothing at this point and sit back and say, look, we didn't respond to this, in the same way that Israel doesn't respond week after week after week, and it very, very rarely makes the headlines when rockets are being fired into Israel? We don't often hear about it, but it's a regular occurrence. Is that an option, do you think, parts of the Israeli cabinet will be pondering to do nothing?
I think there'll be parts of the Israeli cabinet pondering to do nothing. There'll be parts of the Israeli cabinet saying that, yes, we'll take the victory. And there'll be other parts of the Israeli cabinet and those that are influencing it who are saying we need to strike back in a very robust way. And there's numbers of different ways that Israel can strike back. It doesn't have to strike back militarily. It can look at a number of other different issues that are out there. For example, this is the first time that we've heard Rishi Sunak in one speech where he's talking about what's going on inside Israel in the Middle East and linking it directly to Vladimir Putin. Now, if Israel turned around and they haven't come out and openly supported Ukraine at the moment, that would send a very strong message, not just to Putin, but also to Iran, because there is a greater link between them. So there's a lot of subtle things that can go on here, but it's too early really to tell what is likely to come out. We don't know what the domestic political pressures are on Netanyahu, and that's quite dangerous.
What's interesting about this, the kind of, I suppose, the much wider picture, it was referenced there by Rishi Sunak that obviously Russia, while this was happening, was continuing to try to do damage in Ukraine. Russia have come out in favour or supportive of what is happening with Iran. You look at the wider picture than that, China appear to be more sympathetic with Russia than Ukraine. You've got other countries as well. India has never condemned what is happening, what Russia are doing in Ukraine. There's a big, wide picture there. It wasn't meant to be like this, was it? Because when we were at school, we were all... I remember my teacher going, you're the first generation not to see a war going on, because all of that had happened way in the past, and now we were living in times of peace. And obviously what was going on with the IRA was one thing, but globally speaking, it seemed to be a fairly quiet place. It's now worse than ever.
Definitely. And I think what we're seeing is really, really quite precarious everywhere. And I think that's something that Rishi Sunak very much referenced in his statement, that this isn't just a conflict in the Middle East, that it isn't just a conflict in Ukraine. This is a really big escalation of tensions globally. And especially with what you were just saying with China, our relationship with China has worsened massively over the past 10 years. China's relationship with Russia is the best it's ever been. That's just not good news at all. And we've had multiple conversations on this channel about what our relationship with China means and that kind of deterioration, because we rely so heavily on China and all of these countries. So everything has an impact a lot further than it may seem initially.
Indeed. Philip is back with us. Just a final word, Philip. We've only got about 30 seconds. Let's look at that bigger picture, if you could, briefly. Where do you see this story going next?
Well, next sits in the hands of the Israelis. If the Israelis go for a greater military attack, then Iran will respond again. We'll see a rapid jump up the escalation ladder. I think what Iran, if Israel doesn't respond, Iran will stimulate greater activity through the Houthis in Yemen, through Hezbollah from southern Lebanon, and through Hamas and the other actors that they've got working as proxies in Syria and Iraq. So we're in for a more torrid time, I would suggest.
Indeed. Philip, always thorough stuff. Phillip Ingram, thank you very much indeed for your time.